Good evening, everybody. I'll just wait a moment just to see if anybody can join me live tonight. But do remember, these are always recorded to watch later on, and I always put them on my YouTube channel, Peyton Principles Natural Health, as well. I'm sure on a beautiful night like tonight, you may not want to. Hello, Tanya. I can see you're watching. Thank you for joining me. I was just saying, on such a beautiful night that people might want to be out in the sunshine, so I won't keep you for too long tonight. I just thought tonight, I'm trying to do a bit of a focus on some of the digestive things that come up quite a lot. So I just wanted to speak about this tonight around dairy. And just to say, for those that aren't aware, that I've just run a 2-week group program, really focusing on how to support gut health, foods to take out, foods to include that really support that. And it's been a really enjoyable 2-week program, lots of new recipes to try out, lots of information that I share along the way. So let me get started, as I said, so you can get back out in the sunshine tonight, because it's such a beautiful night at the end of March, about this topic. Why dairy? Why is it that dairy tends to cause digestive problems, probably more than anything else? And is it really a case of, oh gosh, no alternative but to just eliminate dairy from the diet? Or are there things that you can do that may help you to still consume it? And I'll just explain what tends to happen. So, it's really important to understand that we are talking about an intolerance usually when we talk about dairy. And the first thing I want to talk about, and the most common thing, is to do with what we know as lactose intolerance. So you will see products out there, for example, milk. You'll still see milk out there that says it's for those that have a lactose intolerance. What does that actually mean? Well, lactose is the milk sugar in dairy. And it's the milk sugar called lactose that can be difficult to digest. And when we understand a bit about digestion, we need digestive enzymes to break down our food. Different enzymes break down different things. And when it comes to lactose, we need a particular enzyme in the body called lactase. And this is the problem. So lactase tends to be secreted less frequently as we get older. And it's this that starts to cause the problem. And the typical symptoms that people experience is the bloating in the lower abdomen area, maybe get some cramping, you may get increased wind, gas, and it can cause diarrhea. It can even, at more extreme problems, it can be really difficult for people, cause bowel urgency, and this can become a real problem for people. So those are the most common symptoms, and it's due usually to the lactose, the milk sugar, that's difficult for people to break down. And what happens is this lactose that's not digested because of a lack of the enzyme makes its way down into the gut. It's still there, it hasn't been broken down, and some of the gut bacteria start to ferment it. Certain types of bacteria may start to ferment it, and this can create those problems that I just said. Now, why is it can cause a problem in some people and not in others? Well, we know that there are certain parts of the population that experience it more than others. So in Europeans, it's a really small percentage of people that struggle with digestion and lack the enzyme called lactase, as I said, that breaks it down. And this increases to quite a high percentage of the population in more sort of Asian and African communities. You can have sort of 80% plus of the population who just cannot tolerate dairy at all because they lack this enzyme. And I think what's really important is to understand that, as I say to some of my clients, and as I'll go on to talk about, it's not really that we can't consume it at all, but it's really important to remember that we are the only mammals that continue to consume dairy after weaning. When we're babies in the stomach, mammals, mammalians, they produce, babies produce renin in their stomach lining, and renin breaks down this milk, and we have a problem as we get older because we're then we lack the renin, and we're relying on lactase that's found in another part of the digestive system. And as I said, larger parts of the population, depending on what part of the world you're from, and communities and cultures can struggle because they lack this enzyme called lactase. So it's because as mammals, I believe, that we're not really meant to be consuming much dairy. I think the problem comes about that for many of us, we just consume so much of it. It's become such a large part of our diet, when I think really it's not meant to be, and not meant to be consumed in such large quantities as we tend to in the Western world. Now, this enzyme is found in what we call the brush borders of the small intestines, these little finger-like projections, villi in the brush border that increases this surface area for digestion, and that's where it's found, and that's where we can lack it in certain parts of the community and cultures. So when we lack it completely, it's called it's a primary lactase deficiency. But as we get older, it's called a secondary deficiency, and often this can come about as we get older for various reasons. It starts to be because there are problems with the gut lining. So what is causing the problem with the gut lining? Is it due to inflammation? Is it due to a more severe problem like celiac disease? Because the brush border can become flattened, these villi can become flattened, and so it's hard to keep hold of that lactase enzyme. You know, people with ulcerative colitis, they may start to have problems. Those are more severe problems, but it may only be a bit of inflammation that's going on, a weakened gut lining, a problem with the mucosal lining that can create a problem for the lactase to be produced in sufficient quantities. And this is when it's called secondary. So maybe if you've got a lot of stress in your life, this can all have a problem in the gut with digestion overall, and create more of a problem with the lactase enzyme and digesting lactose. Now, before I come on and just talk about solutions, I think it's just important for me to just mention about casein. Now, people often mix up the two. So we have lactose, it's a milk sugar. Casein is the protein, it's the milk protein. And there's two different types. And they're commonly known as A1 and A2 types of casein protein. And you may find in the supermarket, when you go and look, you may find something that's called A1 milk, and you may find something that's called A2 milk. And it's the A2 that's better tolerated for some people. You may find it's advertised and marketed as being more easily digested, and it tends to be that for those that may struggle with casein, that they will find that the A2 milk is better digested, but it won't help you if you've got a problem with the lactose side of it. And it can become a bit confusing because many of the symptoms can be the same, but casein as a problem tends to be more common in infancy, as a child, and doesn't usually appear as we get older, unlike the lactose side of things. But at the end of the day, if we've got a problem with dairy, the best thing is to reduce your intake or to cut it out initially, rather than really starting to worry. You could try the lactose free milk and see if it helps. You could try this A2 milk to see if it's more to do with the casein, but usually as we get older, it's to do with the lactase enzyme and the digestion of lactose. The other thing as a general point I'd like to make is I find that for many people, dairy as a whole is mucus forming in the body. It makes the lymphatic system sluggish, and it can throw off problems in parts of the body that can be more noticeable as children, like tonsillitis and glue ear, and as we get to adults can cause more of what I call sinusitis, a runny nose, a bit sniffly all the time, more sort of swollen lymph glands can become a problem. And I find that can be due to, there are other foods as well, but often dairy can be one of those foods that's more well known to be mucus forming and can cause a problem with the lymphatic system. But that's a slightly different point of what I want to talk about tonight. So really, what can we do about it? Because I do feel that for most of us that we should be able to digest some dairy. I don't feel for most of us that we need to take it out of our diets. However, I do believe we need to moderate our intake, and we shouldn't consume as much as we tend to. You know, loads of milk, on your cereal, drinking milk on its own, then having lots of yogurt or having lots of cheese or having ice cream. You can see how it can build up as the day goes on. First of all, you know, we can think about digestion. You can reduce your overall intake, but one of the main things that can be a problem is to do with gut dysbiosis. And this is all to do with an imbalance of gut bacteria, where the beneficial bacteria is out of balance and reduced in proportion to the more harmful and less beneficial bacteria in our gut. And the reason why this is important is that we've got certain strains of beneficial bacteria that are known as lactic acid bacteria, and they can be very helpful to very quickly and efficiently break down and ferment the lactose without it creating huge problems in the gut and creating a lot of gas and wind and all the other problems associated with that. But for many people, we lack sufficient numbers of these beneficial lactic acid bacteria, and we have this sort of dysbiosis and this imbalance going on. So it can be that you may find that you can tolerate small quantities of lactose, and the first thing I'd say is, you know, don't start putting dairy and milk onto cereal. Use nut milk alternatives. If you're making porridge, maybe make it with water. But if you fancy a little bit of hard cheese, you may find you can tolerate some of that. Perhaps a little dash of milk in a cup of tea or coffee might be okay for you. You just need to go away first of all and look at your intake and decide if there's just too much on a daily basis. Maybe just have days when you don't consume it and other days when you just have small amounts. But a really important area to start to think about is what is going on in the gut. Does the gut need some support? Would it be helpful to take some good quality probiotics and not the dairy drinks in this instance? Not only are they dairy, which is what we're saying could be a problem, but also because they contain sugar, those drinks, and the levels of the good bacteria tend to be quite low. You know, we're talking about probiotics of 20 billion plus, and you could look for what's known as the Lab 4 range of probiotics. It's a range of probiotics that have been well studied and documented to have beneficial effects on the gut. And then you could start to think about eating more fermented foods, and you know, the sauerkrauts and the kombuchas and the kefir, but not kefir with dairy. You might try a goat's milk, which is definitely more easily tolerated than cow's milk dairy. Lots of different ones that you could try, fermented foods. They're not going to have a dramatic impact on increasing levels of beneficial bacteria, but if they're only minor out of balance, then for maintenance, it's really, really helpful to just consume some fermented foods and to have them as a maintenance and keep consuming those on a regular basis. More and more now we're looking at prebiotic fibers, and I've done talks about prebiotic fibers before, and if you go to my YouTube channel, Peyton Principles Natural Health, you will find some talks about prebiotic fibers. So it's more than I can talk about here today, but more and more now we're looking at specific strains of prebiotic fibers, and the prebiotic ones are the ones that provide the food for the beneficial bacteria. This could be, going forwards, and the more research that's undertaken, more important than probiotics. You know, probiotics are the good bacteria, but when we take them and consume them, are they actually thriving and surviving in the gut, or are they passing through and only having a temporary benefit? So actually the more research in this area is around the prebiotic fibers that actually feed the bacteria that's there and then help them to grow and thrive and become stronger. And at the end of the day, if we really want to investigate what might be going on in the gut, is to do stool testing, because it's this area that I do more and more of that is really, really telling us what's going on. It can tell us across the whole range of commensal bacteria whether we've got good levels and a good range of them, or are we actually home and actually allowing more of the bad gram-negative type bacteria, the pathogenic ones, even the parasites, start to thrive and grow even more, which of course we just don't want. So if we really want to dig deep in this area and uncover what's going on, then, you know, stool testing is the way to go. But as a short term, I would say try probiotics, try fermented foods, and just look at your daily intake of your dairy. Look at if it's sort of, yes, it's creeping up and you're just consuming too much of it on a day-to-day basis, and just reduce your intake right down to see if it's that you've just got too much in your diet and you can actually consume small amounts of it. And I can see, Liz, you've just joined me, and I'm really sorry, but I've just come to the end of my talk, but I am saving it, so you will be able to catch up on this later on. I'm not going to be here next Tuesday. I am taking a little bit of time off over Easter. I won't be here on Friday for my weekly update. I do need a bit of time off. I've been going at full pelt since the start of the year, so I'm taking a little bit of time off. So we'll be back a week on Friday. I'm not sure what the date is. I think it might be the 9th of April, but for my weekly Nutrition in the News, I'll be back then for my live, and I will be doing my proper live the following Tuesday after that, whatever the date may be. I really can't think off the top of my head, but it'll be the second Tuesday in April. I'll be back to do my my weekly talk. So thanks for watching tonight. If you've got any comments after I post this and you thought of something, do post it in the comments below, and I will check back and I'll answer your comments. But otherwise, get out in the sunshine and enjoy the next couple of days, because it's going to be gorgeous. Take care. Bye.